not before y'all leave this class. At the beginning of the semester, I asked y'all, what were some things that you were excited to learn? What are some things that you're hesitant about? And a lot of what I heard was that public speaking anxiety. A lot of y'all were like, I'm shy. I've never had to do this before. I'm not good at it. I don't like all the attention, so on and so forth. So we're going to talk about ways to manage that today. So first thing is first, what is communication apprehension? Anytime I talk about it from this point forward, it's going to be labeled CA. So just keep that in mind. Anytime you see CA, that just is a shortcut for communication apprehension. So the definition that was in your textbook and that we're going to use for this class is, it is fear or anxiety that's experienced by a person due to real or perceived communication with another person or persons, meaning any communication that you may or may not have that you have that you're apprehensive about. So there are different types of communication apprehension. The first one is trait communication apprehension, which is the general tendency to experience anxiety related to communication, in essence, incorporating it into a person's personality. So that would be like social. I would think of that as like social anxiety, or something that becomes a part of that person in any given communication, like any given interaction with someone, regardless of whether that's public speaking or whether that's just like talking to your friend or like making friends or going into a situation where you know you're going to have anxiety. That's trait communication apprehension. State communication apprehension is the anxiety related to communication that that occurs in a particular situation and time. So that would be more related to like if you really hate going out. So like I can sit and have a conversation with y'all, or I can have a conversation with my friends or whatever anytime, or even if I'm meeting new people in a small setting, I'm good. You take me to a big party with a bunch of people I've never met, that communication apprehension, that anxiety, it's there. I don't really want to get to know that many people at one time, right? But it only occurs during particular situations and times, but it's not every single interaction that you have causing that anxiety. And then the one that I think we see a lot of in here is public speaking anxiety. Excuse me. So public speaking anxiety is a type of communication apprehension that produces physiological, cognitive, and behavioral reactions in people when faced with real or imagined presentation. So think of like when you start sweating, or if you start stumbling over your words, or you like go blank, you lose your train of thought, like everything you thought you knew is gone. That's all related to public speaking anxiety. So what can we do to manage this? Because public speaking, some of you may end up having to do it in your jobs. Some of you may end up needing to do it for, like if you write a paper and make it to a conference, or there are all sorts of situations where you could become a public speaker in some way, whether that's training at your company or whatever it is. So the first way is systematic desensitization. We're going to pretend I can say that. Essentially exposure. So the more you do something, the less anxiety you feel about doing that thing, right? So Bodie in 2010 said that we become less anxious about something when we're exposed to it more often. And this can also, like, we can use this for both our real or imagined scenarios. So if you imagine, so this second bullet point can result from imagined or real exposure to anxiety inducing scenarios. That means, and we'll talk about this, but like imagining, like seeing in your mind, like you on stage or not on stage, you up front in front of people talking, you delivering this speech, so on and so forth, like you actually imagining yourself doing that can be considered exposure, as well as real exposure like we do in this class, where like we did that self-introduction speech, or when I had you last week make those like mini presentation or those mini lessons about something that you really liked, and then coming back and asking y'all to like teach us about it. So thinking about exposure, thinking about the things that you've been exposed to this semester, how do you feel now about public speaking compared to how you felt at the beginning of the semester? I'm going to pause here and let y'all answer. Where's my
I'll go. I can say that it helps me like form my thoughts and form what I'm doing, you know, like rather than creating a pretty messy outline of what I want to talk about, it really helps me structure what I want to talk about. And I don't really have an issue with public speaking. I never really have a problem with that. It's more just organizing my thoughts in a way that makes sense to other people, you know. So this class helps me a lot with that.
Awesome. So it's not necessarily the exposure of public speaking that helps you, but rather the exposure to outlines and to different ways of organizing your speech that helps you become a better public speaker, is what I'm hearing.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Who else? Maybe someone who wasn't so sure about public speaking, but now that we've done a couple of speeches, you might feel a little differently about it. Let's hear from one of you.
I'll go. I feel better, especially with the outline we use, just, getting everything out there.
Okay, I should have known that pause would have taken a little longer for the people who weren't as comfortable with public speaking, but thank you for sharing, Lauren. Yeah, so what I'm hearing is that outline really changed a lot, but also then with that exposure, being able to practice a little bit in not such a high stake environment, right? You're not presenting in front of your boss or in front of your colleagues or to a really important group of people. You're presenting to me and your peers. So it's not as high risk as other situations. All right. Thank you two for sharing. So another way of managing public speaking is cognitive restructuring, or the way you think about it. So this is when we change the way we think about something. It's kind of, the definition is within the term. There are 3 steps you can take to use this as like your managing technique. So your first step is to process your fears and to realize that many of your thoughts associated with public speaking anxiety are irrational. For example, I've heard before, not necessarily in this class, but I've heard before, oh, I hate public speaking. I feel like I'm going to die of embarrassment. Recognizing that first step is recognizing that you're not actually going to die from public speaking, right? Like, or from embarrassment. You might get embarrassed. You might stumble over your words, or you might accidentally present wrong information at the wrong time or something, but you're not literally going to die from embarrassment. So part of controlling that anxiety is recognizing that some of the things we think might just be a little irrational. Like, yeah, we're nervous. We're not literally going to die, right? We're gonna make it through this. The second step, if you're using this way to kind of manage, if you're using this technique to manage that anxiety, is communication orientation modification therapy. That's that's a lot. We call it calm therapy. This is a way that to use cognitive restructuring as a way to encourage people to think of public speaking as a conversation rather than a performance. For example, I've heard a lot, I need to rehearse my speech. I have stage fright, or I have to perform this speech. Well, that thinking of it as a performance can be anxiety inducing. So maybe changing the way you talk about presenting. So saying, I need to practice my speech instead of I need to rehearse, because if you're saying rehearse, that kind of implies that you need to memorize, right? And we know from last week, we don't have to memorize. We can have speaker notes. Calling it public speaking anxiety instead of stage fright. You're not literally standing on a stage 99.999% of the time. If you're giving a presentation in class, it's a flat floor. You're not stepping up somewhere. If you're on Zoom, you can be wherever you want to be. So I guess if you want to be on a stage, you could be, but you don't have to be. So instead of calling it stage fright, call it what it is, which is public speaking anxiety. And then instead of performing and feeling like you have to put on this show for your audience, deliver your speech instead of perform your speech. Using in this step, changing the way you talk about it changes the way you think about it. So you might be able to manage that anxiety a little bit better. The third step in this is positive visualization, which we just talked about in the other, what was it? Systematic. I just forgot the term. I'm going blank. But that last term we just talked about, we talked about imagining it. This is where that comes in. Positive visualization. So engage in some relaxation exercises, right? Clear your mind, deep breathing, stretching, something like that. And then play through in your mind what it looks like giving a successful speech. That sounds funny, right? Like I'm asking you to come up, like think in your head about your speech and what that looks like. But if you play any sports or have ever talked to anyone who plays sports, one thing coaches really want their players to do is to visualize the game, right? What are you going to do? What does this play look like if this happens, right? How are you going to execute this thing I'm asking you? So, they use it. If you ask Olympic athletes, they talk about visualization all the time and visualizing their dive or their play or whatever. They visualize it, right? So it's not totally out there to do this. All right, so physical exercise, right? Bless you. My dog just sneezed. I'm sorry. Public speaking, managing public speaking anxiety using like physical exercises or physical movement. So there's deep breathing, right? Kind of meditating, getting in a meditative state where you just focus on your breathing. Do some stretches. So Dr. M, y'all met her a couple of weeks ago. She would make us, before we gave a speech in her class, she would make us stand up and literally like we had to shake it out. Like we would have to stand there and shake our whole bodies and shake it out. But you can also stretch, right? It doesn't have to be anything crazy. No, you don't have to do yoga, but just a couple of like stretching out your arms and your shoulders and just like moving around. And while this sounds funny, and y'all may or may not have heard this, but the Superman or Superwoman pose where that you stand up straight and put your hands on your hips, like your fist on your hips, it's actually been proven. There's actually been studies that your confidence, your self-confidence goes up if you do this for just like 5 minutes. So I have a quote from a study by Carney et al. Back in 2010. This pose increases the sense of power and self-confidence due to their association with interpersonal dominance. Fancy way of saying it rises your self-confidence. It raises that self-confidence. So 5 minutes, just stand there like Superman would, and it actually helps you become more confident, which is a really cool thing. That's a really cool study. Y'all should definitely look that up and read more on like things they found out with that. But those are 3 different ways to manage that anxiety, like that we broke down step by step. But these are top 10 strategies for reducing anxiety, for managing that anxiety, right? You're not alone. You're not by yourself. Public speaking anxiety happens to anyone and everyone. You're not going to be by yourself. So, confront it, manage it, and move on, right? It's going to happen. I still get public speaking anxiety, and I do this for a living. I talk to a bunch of people for a living, and I still get anxiety. Again, I said this earlier, but you can't literally die of embarrassment. So if that's something that is causing you anxiety, just remember you can't actually die from it. I know it feels that way, but you're not going to actually die. And most of the time, especially depending on who your audience members are, like if it's me and your peers, we're going to be very forgiving and understanding, because we all know, going back to step 1 or that first strategy, we all know what it's like doing something like this. So we know it's not going to be like a perfect, and that you might be worried about it, and that's okay. It always feels worse than it looks. I'm going to let y'all in on a little secret. Every single time I've gotten off of a class, like with y'all, we've finished our class, we've all gone our separate ways. I'll get off and Evan will ask me, how did that class go? And I'll say, I feel like I just did like the worst job ever. Like I did not do well today. And then y'all come back the next day or whenever it is, and I see y'all using strategies that we talked about, or, that one time where y'all all, told me how much you were enjoying the class. Like that was a big thing for me, because it always feels worse than it looks, right? All right, next one, take deep breaths. It makes you feel better. Like that's a good way to fight the adrenaline that causes the anxiety. So deep breaths. Look the part. This is a big thing. Dress the way you want people to see you, right? Dress professionally. That enhances your confidence, and you don't have to worry about like, what if they think I'm not qualified or whatever. So look the part. Channel your nervousness into positive energy and motivation. So rather than letting your nervousness like get you down or get you stressed out or get you worried, focus that into another part of your speech where like, hey, this could use more energy. That's where my energy is going. Start your outline and research early. The better information and the more you know your information, the better you're going to feel about giving these presentations. And then practice and get feedback from a trusted source. So yes, it says don't practice for your cat. I'm not saying don't practice. There have been multiple times where I've set up my room with like my animals or like with all my pets, and then like if I had any stuffed animals laying around or something, there's been tons of times I've set up my room with things that could not give me feedback just to practice. But I did that after I had gotten all my feedback from like my professors or peers, and I had edited everything and I was just practicing the delivery. So you can totally practice on your cat or whatever animal you have, or stuffed animals. You can totally practice on them. Do it once you're done and you're just practicing the delivery, and don't like rely on that as your sole source. Again, we talked about this, but visualize success through positive thinking. So see it in your mind, how this is supposed to look, and then prepare. Practicing is the key to success when public speaking. Yes, you can have your notes. No, you don't have to memorize it. Like, yes, it's totally okay to mess up. We're all going to, but the more you practice, the more you're going to feel prepared, the more confident you'll be, and the less likely those little mess ups are, right? So are there any questions right now about any of the strategies that we've talked about for reducing some of this anxiety? And I'll put myself on mute so y'all can answer them or ask them. All right, so here's what we're gonna do. Do you remember that mini lesson that I wanted you to make last week, and we didn't get to hear everyone's little mini lesson? It was over whatever you wanted it to be, something that you've something that you're super passionate about, and I showed y'all my true crime lesson. Do y'all just, you can send, let me get everyone's faces here. You can send a thumbs up, or if you want to come off mute and say yes, but do you all remember what I'm talking about? See some thumbs up. Okay. Perfect. So hopefully I told you all to keep them because we were going to come back and use those. So hopefully you still have access to at least some of the notes and can spend most of this time using one of those techniques. But what we're going to do is find those presentations. I say presentations, it could have just been a picture. It didn't have to be a whole PowerPoint. Okay, that's okay. That's fine. No, you're good. Jordan, I think you actually gave your speech, or not speech, but that like mini presentation last week when I originally assigned those.
Yeah, I talked about insects.
Yeah. So hang on just a second. Okay. Sorry, friends. Where were we? Okay. I'm going to give you like 5 minutes, maybe a little longer. I'll let you know when you need to come back. So don't like go so far off that you can't hear me. But go through. We talked about several techniques. I gave you a top 10 like strategy list, but you can also go and look at some of those other ones. If you need me to go back, I'll go back to the top 10 slide, but you can go back to, if you need me to, I can go back to some of the earlier ones. You're going to go use some of those techniques. Go shake it out. Go stand in the Superman pose for 5 minutes. Go do some deep breathing and meditating. But you're gonna go do one of those techniques. You're gonna come back. I'm gonna hear from y'all about your presentations, like hear what you have to say, hear what you came up with. And then be prepared to answer some of these questions. So what technique did you use to help you manage the anxiety? How did you implement it? So did you like go off and do something crazy? Did you make up your own? How did you implement this? Did it work? Because like right now, I imagine some of you might be feeling slight anxiety at the idea of having to give a presentation over something, even if you are passionate about it. So did it work? And would you use this technique again in the future? So I'm going to quit talking. I'm going to play this ignore the 5-minute timer. I'm going to start with 5 minutes, but kind of see where everyone's at the end of that. And we might just take a few more minutes, but y'all can totally go off camera to practice these. Just be prepared to answer those questions. And I'm just going to time it on my watch so that y'all can see this screen. But y'all are good to go. I'm going to continue recording. And I just realized I'm drug-free, y'all. Red Ribbon Week at high school. I forgot I've had this sticker on the whole time. So cool. Anyway, so what you're going to do is give your mini lesson, give your mini presentation on whatever it is that you're passionate about. And then once you're done, talk about some techniques that you used, whether you used one or multiple. Talk about how you implemented that technique. And then let me just do this. Don't want to play that. I do want to put these questions in though. This might be easier. Put these questions in the chat. Okay, so these are the questions you should be answering after you've given your presentation. And again, this is super informal, so, and it's definitely not graded. This is just to practice some of those techniques. So whoever wants to go first, just turn your camera on. I believe you all have the ability to share your screen, and we'll do a few of those.
I'm gonna be honest. I wasn't here last Thursday, so I didn't know we had a presentation. So I've been like scrounging together in my head like something I'm really passionate about. But if you want, I can present something, but I don't have like slides for it.
If you're comfortable. So what we talked about last week, I'm sorry, I should have taken time to explain for those who weren't here. What we did last week was we talked about preparing and delivering a speech. And one of the things that your speech needs is a visual aid. So we were going to do a mini lesson. So you pick something that you're passionate about, and something where you could find some good resources, right? And kind of talk about it. And then have some sort of visual aid, whether that's you made a presentation or whether that you had a picture or a video to show us. But it was just a quick, like 2-minute TED talk basically. And we didn't have time to present it. And so I brought it back this week. So some more people could present and practice that, but also using this technique before they did it. So if you are comfortable with sharing, Max, and you want to give it a go, more than welcome to. But I did not realize I didn't explain that thoroughly for everyone who was not here last week. So that's a quick rundown. So if you're comfortable with it, go for it.
Oh, sweet. I could just do this on the fly. Okay. Let me like find a place to prop up my camera real quick. There we go. Sorry, this is kind of difficult. My desk is like not the cleanest place on the planet right now. So
While you're getting set up, I don't even have a desk right now because we're in the process of, we're getting ready to move. And so things are starting to get packed up, and we're not taking some things with us, and we're getting rid of some things. And the desk was one of the things that we're not taking with us because we're getting a bigger one. So I'm working on like this very unstable table that's like very shaky, and if you just bump against it in the slightest, everything starts to move. So I feel that.
Hey, at least you're getting a bigger desk, you know. All right, let me see if that's the right way. Perfect. Here's gonna be my visual aid. I know what I'm gonna do. Here's my visual aid that I got recently. It's gonna sit here and accompany us during our speech. I love collecting things. It doesn't matter what it is, and I love meeting people who collect things as well. It doesn't matter if it's worthless or if it doesn't have any value to other people. Collecting things is something that I really like, and I love collecting stuffed animals like this little guy. He even has a tag on it that still says 1 of 350 made. I love collecting little things like this. And while some people wouldn't buy this and say like, oh, it's invaluable to me, I wouldn't have anywhere to put it, stuff like this means a whole lot to me. And I have other friends who collect things, like my friend Mason. He's an avid coin collector. And I let him siphon through all the spare change I get at stores, all my piggy banks, everything, because he's always talking about how there's these mercury dimes, there's these pennies that are made of this specific material, there are these quarters that have this little print that are from Washington, D.C., all these little things. And I really love hearing people divulge about their interests. So if you do collect anything or you have any interest to show me, please show me. I would be more than happy to see what you got.
Awesome. Thank you, Max. So what technique did you use? I know you're one who is like, public speaking, not a big deal, but
Yeah.
what technique did you use? I know you used a little bit of the time to like kind of throw something together really quickly, but what did you use to help manage any anxiety you had about giving this little presentation?
This is really weird, but I usually manage it by talking to people as if I'm talking to one of my friends. So like when I'm giving a speech, sometimes I'll accidentally say a curse word. I'll accidentally say like bro, or I'll accidentally go like, hey man, what's up? Or something like that. Or I'll start my speech like that. And I talk to people like they're my friend. And the more I talk to them, the more I get in my comfort zone. I do talk with my hands a lot, and that is kind of an anxiety thing. But I love talking with my hands. It gets people to go like, look around at me. But usually the way I get comfortable is by talking to people like I'm talking to my friends, like I'm talking about my day, like I'm doing whatever. And the more I talk like that, the more I talk like you are my friend, it gets easier for me to just go along with my speech.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is you've managed to turn it into like this, from this performance to just a conversation, which is one of the techniques
Yeah.
that we talked about. But changing it from like I have to rehearse and I have stage fright and I need to perform to I'm having a conversation, I'm just practicing. Maybe there's some anxiety there, but I just need to deliver this speech and get on with my day.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. So who wants to go next? Thank you, Max.
I'll get it over with. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. Let's see. Oh, it says host disable participant screen sharing.
Give me just a second and I will do the thing to help you do that. I'm gonna make you a co-host.
Okay.
And now you should be able to share your screen.
Okay. I don't know if this is gonna work. Allow Zoom to share your screen. Hang on, I have to change something here.
You're good. I'm still figuring out how to work Zoom, and that's how we do all of the things ever, is through Zoom. So still figuring it out as well.
Okay, I don't know if it's gonna let me do this. Give me like 2 seconds. I'm gonna see if I can change my settings.
Yeah, yeah. Are you getting it figured out, Nick?
Okay, so it said I have to restart Zoom in order to share my screen.
Let's not do that.
Okay.
Um,
I have it's on like a Google Slides.
if you want to share that with me and I can share it and then
Okay, yeah.
to get around this. And this is just to make this a teaching moment. These are things that you're going to have to be prepared for if you're ever having to give a speech on Zoom, right? So this is definitely something that is not bad to be prepared for.
I might have to make it shareable. Let's see.
I can see it. It's view only,
Okay.
so I can't do anything, but that's fine because I don't need to do anything on it.
Okay.
So I'm going to mute myself and I'll share this and you can take off.
Okay, so my presentation is about web design and development, which is my major. And basically, it's designing websites and kind of how all of the data on those websites gets collected is really what's important about it. If you want to go to the next one, thank you. So who here knows exactly what happens whenever you go to a website? It's kind of everybody uses websites. We all go on websites every day, but nobody really knows kind of what happens whenever we do that. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what happens. Basically, whenever you type in like google.com or whatever the URL is, your computer is sending a packet request, which is basically like little bits of information, and they're all in different files. And your computer basically like requests that from Google's server. And the packet contains all of the data that's on the page. It's all sent through copper wires underground, and there's servers everywhere, all across the globe. They're all connected to one another through these wires, and then every server has their own IP, and every device has their own IP. So basically, that's like the physical location of that device. I'm like getting really anxious. I know you can probably hear it in my voice, sorry. Basically, those packets are all downloaded by your computer, and your browser actually reads those files and is able to display that content. So that's basically how the internet works. And then if you go to the next one, really this is like web design and development, which is there's front end and back end. And so front end is like how everything looks on the page, how everything's displayed to you. But the back end is everything like data and usernames, passwords, stuff like that. And there's 3 languages used on the front end side of things, which is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And HTML is basically just like all of the content that's going to show up on your page whenever you go there. So any images, text, like the way everything's structured, the way it looks, is going to be HTML. And then CSS is going to basically style that content. So where HTML would be like the heading or the title of your website, CSS would go in and change like the font or the way that it looks. And then JavaScript actually controls your browser. Basically like any image carousels or any like moving components that are going to change whenever you do something on the page are going to be controlled with JavaScript, which is a different language. And then managing the backend, they use like, there's different data management softwares and programs, but a lot of them just use like spreadsheets as their main like file sources. And then those management softwares just read those spreadsheets and kind of pick out information from them. But the way it's organized is basically different everywhere. So wherever you go, you kind of have to learn to adapt to what, like, however they structure their information and structure their data. So if you want to go to the next one. Okay, so why I'm passionate about it, because everything's on the internet. Without a website, businesses are not likely to be found really, like especially if they're a new business and nobody really knows about them. If you're not on the internet, good luck. If your business isn't found, your business isn't used. If it's not used, it's not profitable. And if it's not profitable, you're not going to have a good day. So effective design could mean better ease of use and higher profit for clients, which everybody wants to make more money. Everybody wants to, get that new car, get that new boat, that new house, So yeah, that's why I'm passionate about it. I like websites. I like design. And I think that it's a, growing industry. So yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so one, I know you said you were nervous in the middle of it, but that was like, this is not graded and this was not about like macro structure or like your outline, but that was such a good, like, organized presentation considering it was so like little. So good job. As
Well,
far
thank
as some techniques, some things you can do, I know like in the middle you kind of started speeding up and you felt a little nervous. Just take a deep breath and readjust yourself. That's okay. Like just take a breath, breathe in, and then that usually calms you down when you are starting to get in that frazzled, like I just keep talking and talking and talking, and now I'm getting nervous because or anxious because I can feel like I'm talking too fast and they're not gonna. It just stop, take a breath in your pause, and then keep going.
I definitely felt myself like feeling myself getting nervous, and then that kind of just made me more nervous, and I felt like I had to address it because like if I can tell I'm being anxious or like I don't know, having like struggling, I guess, then I think other people can see that I'm struggling too, and I feel like I have to say something to break that awkwardness.
One way you could view this is you are breaking that fourth wall down, right? So you're opening up that door between yourself and your audience to be like, hey, I'm nervous because I'm human. And that happens, which you see, like I try to do that a lot, not just with y'all, but with my high school students as well. Like, hey, today was crazy. It's a little hectic. Things might get a little crazy and I might forget where I'm at, but just breaking that fourth wall, right? Breaking that veil that's sometimes that you think is in place, and then them knowing like makes you seem human. They're more forgiving. So definitely not a bad thing, but if you're in a position where it's like a professional setting and you don't want to necessarily come out and be like, I'm nervous, take a pause. Like in a spot where you can pause, go get a drink of, most of the time you'd have water or something there. Get a drink of water. It's okay to pause and collect yourself. And no one even has to know that's what it is. You're speaking, go make sure you have some water and just take a sip of water and use that moment to collect yourself. But before you started speaking, what were some techniques that you used to help try to like manage that anxiety before you had to go present?
So I was definitely taking a lot of deep breaths, but I didn't really feel like it was helping very much. I feel like as soon as I was like, all right, let's get this over with, like that anxiety sort of went away a little bit. So I feel like the majority of my anxiety is like I don't remember, I think it was the stated, I don't remember what you called it, but it was the second one on your list of 3 communicating anxiety things.
Like how you word things, so saying like perform instead of, or saying
no, I think it was like where you get anxiety leading up to or imagining the
the systematic desensitization, I think. Yes. So your exposure. So the more, what I'm hearing is then the more you're exposed to it, the more confident you'll feel. But even exposing yourself to it in your mind.
right.
Helps.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, I hope that continues to work for you and you use it in the future. Jordan and Lauren, if y'all want to be our last 2, or if it is 5:37 and I do want to talk about some things. So if y'all are cool with just like hopping on to the next thing. But if you're super passionate and ready to go, I'm more than happy to hear it. Just wanted to give you an update. It is 5:38 and we have a couple of things that we need to, like a couple of due dates that we need to talk about. So how are y'all feeling about doing this?
I'm feeling a little nervous, but I think I could be done in maybe like 2 minutes. I'll try.
I was just gonna do it in case like no one else wanted to. Mine was just about respiration.
Yeah, so Jordan, since you did yours last week, let's go ahead and go to Lauren, and then we'll just move on since you did it last week. But thank you for volunteering.
I might have to share mine because it won't let me share my screen. So
Yeah, just put the link in the chat and I'll click on it and share it for you.
where do you find the link at? Is it
If it's a Google anything, you just go to the top, like just
oh wait,
the
never mind.
little bar at the top, and you just copy that and paste it into the chat. Can you go in and change your share? So if the top right corner, hit the share button and then hit at the bottom. It should say something about UALR if you're on your UALR website or email, and just change the access to where anyone with the link can access it. So you'll have to click on, it's at the very bottom. There should be a little arrow or something, and then you can change it to anyone with this link.
Sorry.
Do you see where I'm talking about?
I see what you're talking about.
Okay.
Okay. Is it working now?
Let me refresh. Yes, it's working now. So let me share my screen. I'm going to mute myself and share my screen, and you can get started as soon as you're ready.
Okay. So today we're going to be talking about chemistry. I'm very passionate about chemistry. So, and I'll put a picture for us to see. That's another picture. So chemistry is a study of matter defined as anything that has mass and takes up space. Chemistry is typically considered a physical science because the study of chemistry does not involve living things. Can you press the next? Okay. So chemistry is a part of our everyday lives, from the food we eat, cosmetics we use. It helps us figure out like what temperature to bake something, or what SPF to use. It also helps you understand which elements your body needs. Like, you know, some of us need vitamin D, vitamin C, etc. Keep pressing it. So this is another list of the things we use, you know, every day. Coffee, emotions, tears from cutting onions and different foods, medicines, hygienes, etc. So it's typically 5 types of chemistry studied. There's organic, analytical, physical, inorganic, and biochemistry. So my interest in chemistry began when I was a kid. I loved mixing things together, and I just find it really interesting how our bodies and everyday life items are combined with different elements and compounds. And then we have the periodic table, which it contains 118 elements, which describe the name, electrons, oxidation states, visualized trends, 3D orbitals, isotopes, and mixed compounds. And I did have that's it. I did have a reference page with all my sources, but I don't know what happened to it. So, but yeah, I hope you learned something about chemistry.
I won't say anything if you won't say anything. Yes, thank you. I have not taken a chemistry class in a very long time. So there were things on there that I forgot about, but never a bad thing to be reminded. So Lauren, what technique did you use to manage some anxiety you were feeling?
I did deep breathing and the shake it off method, but I really felt under pressure, so I don't think I did that well. But before I did do the deep breathing and stuff.
Well, so it's important to realize, going back to talking about, one, you did great. Yeah, all of the love and all of the shine that's happening in the chat, they're totally right. You did a great job. I think the important thing is if we go back to one of the steps in those, like, the communication orientation theory, that calm theory that we talked about, and all those different steps within that, one of those steps was realizing that your fears are kind of irrational. Like, I know public speaking anxiety is real, and that fear that's there, like you start sweating, like I get red in the face. There are very visible, mine are very physical signs. But realizing that your fears are slightly irrational, like you're not going to die from embarrassment or anything like that. And so once you've recognized those fears and you're able to process them, that might help you in the future, like going forward, realizing, like, yes, acknowledge that you're anxious, but also acknowledge that all the things you're scared about are probably irrational, and they're not going to physically hurt you in any way. They're not spiders or snakes or anything like that. But how do you feel about using them going into, like, the next, like our next speech, like our big speech that's coming up?
I think they did well. I kind of want to try the different styles though, just to see which one works the best.
Yeah.
But I think
Yeah.
I'll use them though.
Absolutely. And this is for everyone. We're totally going to be practicing. You will definitely have the opportunity to practice those. Before y'all head out, because I know I'm pushing it on time. Y'all are supposed to be out of here right now. There's just a couple of things that I wanted to remind you that we're coming up. So your worksheets, I know I meant to send y'all an email and I forgot. Don't worry about the deadline, like that I gave you, because that was my bad. I forgot to send you an email. That the worksheets are for the option that you pick. So whether you picked option 1, which is you are serving, option 2, it's something you've done in the past, or option 3, you're exploring potential places you could volunteer or serve within the community. Next week, I'm sorry, not next week, this Thursday, bring a very rough draft of your speech outline. It does not have to be done. It doesn't have to be like you have all of your parts ready because it's not due yet, but just bring that in, because we're going to be looking at some of those macro structure parts and identifying some of those pieces. Informative speech dates, November 9th. Your rehearsal, everybody, November 9th, your rehearsal video, rubric, formal outline, PowerPoint, and speaking notes are due on Blackboard. That's for everyone, regardless of what date you're actually presenting. November 9th, 11th, 16th, and 18th are the dates that we'll be giving the informative speeches. Next Tuesday, I'll have a sign-up sheet for the order for each day that you'll present. So you'll go in and you'll sign up for one of those days and in one of those time slots. November 30th will be our Unit 3 debrief. So between our last speech and that November 30th date, we'll have fall break. So we won't see each other for a little bit. So November 30th will be our Unit 3 debrief. Our last day of class is December 2nd. And our final exam is from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. on December 9th. To answer all of your questions that I know you have about that, no, it's not going to be a real test. You're not going to have to take a final test. You've done your 3 required options. However, that final test or that final exam day where we would be with each other for 2 hours, it's going to be a really fun time for us to just say like bye to each other, but also I'm going to give you some really good information because I've picked up a lot on things that y'all might be interested in. And now that you've taken ACOM 1300, you can take any other communication course that you want. So if you want to do negotiation, like we talked about a little bit, we kind of touched on negotiation in conflict when we were talking about conflict. So if you wanted to touch on that, we have negotiation classes, so on and so forth. So I'm going to give you some good places to go look now that you've taken ACOM 1300, so you can go in any direction with the other communication courses. But also just like a moment for us to have like a virtual pizza party type thing where we say bye to each other. So definitely plan on attending that final exam. But with that, y'all can head out. Y'all have a great night, and I will see you Thursday. If you have questions, you can hang out and I'll answer them. But with that, y'all have a great night.
Have a good night, Professor.
You too.
I have questions.